What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Niners News here on 49ers Hive. My name is Zach Hernandez. I'm joined by my friend Matt Llewellyn. Matt, how you doing?
Hey, hanging in there during these tough times, Zach. How are you?
I hear you, man. Same here. Today, we're going to be talking about 49ers running back Jerick McKinnon, and more specifically, what we can realistically expect from him this season. Matt, he missed 2 years back-to-back with torn ACLs. What kind of production can you expect from a guy returning from back-to-back injuries like that?
It's tough. He had a second operation in September of 2019. And he said in an interview that his ACL and his meniscus was fine after having it repaired the year before. This operation was an unspecified sort of thing. If I were to guess, he was probably having some scar tissue cleaned up. So sometimes what happens is, when you're healing, the scar tissue builds up and sometimes you form adhesions, which, things are kind of sticking in places where they're not supposed to. That can cause pain. That can cause a decrease in the range of motion. He could be somebody who naturally has a lot of scar tissue. So getting that cleaned up is very important. And so you hope that the knee is structurally sound first and foremost. You want to get him through practice. You want to get him through camp. You want to get him through the preseason, and maybe, just get him out there on the field, just, in some contact just to see what he's got. It's one of those things where he injured the knee originally just cutting on air, just one of those things going through drills, and it happens. It's unfortunate that it's been 2 years because that makes it tough to project. You wonder, is everything okay? As we've seen recently with Todd Gurley, once those legs go, they could be gone, especially if there's some arthritic component to the knee. We don't know. He says the cartilage is fine, but we won't know until he gets out there. We hear the talk last year where it's like, man, I'm excited to be back, ready to get out there, ready to do the thing. And then, he'd practice for a day and then he'd be off for another 8, come back, practice again, knee flares up, boom, right back on IR. So for me, a realistic expectation, or should I say a hopeful expectation, is that he can actually make it through the preseason and, be somebody that you can rely on for, third downs. Because the one thing that he was good at in Minnesota was catching passes out of the backfield. And, with Tevin Coleman leading the 49ers last year with 21, that is an area that is lacking on offense.
I kind of envision Jeff Wilson type role for him, at least this year, if he's able to come back healthy. I totally agree with you. It's extremely important, first of all, get him through camp, get him through preseason, get him to take some hits again for the first time in 2 years. That's a long time. Guys are, shaking off rust for a few weeks after a season off, and he took season back-to-back off. So that's just, it's tough to come back from that. And just like you said, it's tough to even predict what his year should look like or what it could look like. I know his last 2 years in Minnesota, he totaled 539 in 2016 and rushing yards, and 570 rushing yards in 2017. So, and he wasn't the lead back at all. So it's promising. And I remember when the 49ers signed him, a lot of fans were like, why are we signing this guy? He's kind of a relatively unknown name. And then people started doing some in-depth reviews and articles on him. And Kyle Shanahan loves traits. And I think Jerick McKinnon has those traits. He's a pass-catching back. He's quick. He's shifty. And I just think best case scenario, he gets a Jeff Wilson type role in this system moving forward this year. And hopefully that's something he can build on because, man, he's been extremely, extremely disappointing. And it's not even something that's in his control. Obviously,
No.
2 injuries like that back-to-back, that's nothing that he had control of. But I'm very excited to see him healthy in this system. I think he could actually do some damage. Now, Matt, that running back room is going to get kind of crowded if he comes back healthy. Who's the odd man out?
It could very well be Jerick McKinnon. He restructured his deal. He's playing on the vet minimum this year. There's nothing to say that if he gets out there and doesn't perform, that they just, jettison him. He got paid a lot of money to do a whole little bit, and unfortunately, the best ability is availability. The best trade is being able to be out there and actually playing, and there comes a point where, yes, they signed him to a big contract because they liked him. That hasn't worked out so far. And if it, continues to be that way, maybe it's time you just say, you know what, we'll stick with what we got, because it worked last year. Now, Matt Breida is out the door, so that does create an extra space for him. But if they do end up cutting McKinnon and going with somebody like, obviously Raheem Mostert is going to be the starter. And if you want to go with Tevin Coleman and Jeff Wilson Jr. behind him, you can do that. They have a couple of undrafted free agents that people are a little bit high on coming into camp. So it's all going to depend. The thing that you have to remember is this is a running back coming off of 2 years of serious knee injury. There's no guarantee that he's ever going to make it back. And if that's the case, then it's time to cut bait.
Totally agree. Now, that's obviously worst case scenario. He doesn't come back healthy. He doesn't come back 100%. Best case scenario, you talked about your hopeful scenario, kind of what you would hope to see out of him. Absolute best, blows you away. You didn't expect this. What does that look like?
That's going to be, 30, 35 catches, a couple hundred yards, maybe a few touchdowns here and there, 2 or 3, especially on third down, being a safety valve for Jimmy, especially when you're, running George out there in the middle of the field in intermediate routes, and you really need that guy underneath, to get stuff done. Having that running back, that safety valve there, that kind of releases George to be able to get down the field rather than having to, maybe block and release to the flat, that's the best case scenario for him, honestly. Yeah, I know that he did some returning in Minnesota, so maybe you can put him back on punt returns, but for the amount of money that you've already paid him and the injury history, I don't know if that's going to be realistic. Although once we get to who's going to be in the room with the wide receivers, because that's becoming a crowded room, maybe Richie James isn't here and you need that punt returner, and that could be something that he could do. But yeah, his best case scenario is for him to stay healthy this year. That bottom line, even before all the stats, anything else, you want to see him be able to get out on the field and play football without thinking too much about the last 2 years full of injuries for him.
Yeah, if he doesn't go on injured reserve once this season, I would consider that a successful year for him. It's just been an injury-riddled time with the 49ers, and I don't believe he was injured with the Vikings, at least seriously, so no. It's really unfortunate to see. Now, obviously, just like you said, he is on a vet minimum. He restructured his deal, so he knows this time is up. How much does that pressure work both ways? Do you think it might inspire him to play really, really well and really hard, but also that risk is there that he might push it too hard and re-injure himself? How much does he have to manage that battle kind of mentally and make sure he's not going too hard and put his body at risk even further?
Well, that's the key. It's not going too hard, because you can have all the desire in the world. When I was younger, I could play basketball. Now I'm older, I've had injuries and stuff, and it just doesn't work the same. It's just, he's had 2 years of serious knee injuries, and the worst thing that he can do is be too hungry to get out there and put himself at risk. The knee is what it's going to be, and it's either going to work right or it's not, and there's no amount of desire that's going to change the anatomy. Again, the aforementioned Todd Gurley, I'm sure that he still desires to be a top 5 back in the league, but the proof is in the pudding that he's just not. He can't do the things that he used to do. And, worst case scenario is that's the case with Jet McKinnon, and he has to kind of retire that Jet nickname. So you do want to be careful with those sort of things. You can get overhyped, and you can go too hard, and you can hurt yourself. But at the same time, you don't want to be so passive that you're afraid to get hurt, and then you get hurt because you're doing things differently than you normally would. There's a fine line that you have to play. And, as we saw with Jimmy Garoppolo this last year, he thought about the knee almost all year, and he would say at the time, no, the knee's good. I'm not thinking about it. But in retrospect, he'll tell you, yeah, I was thinking about the knee. It took X amount of weeks for it to, feel this way. It took X amount of weeks until I stopped thinking about it altogether. There's no amount of, you can't change how your mental state takes as far as healing goes. The body can heal really quick, but it's all about your mindset.
Yeah, it really is a fine line, and Jimmy's the perfect example of this. Granted, he didn't come back off of 2 back-to-back ACL tears, but still, he came back from a serious injury. He's wearing the brace, and, he would tell media, just like you said, after the fact, it was on my mind. I was conscious of it as I was out there. And I think the most important thing you said is not being overly careful to the point that you're kind of maneuvering your body differently, because that can also cause injuries. We've seen it in the NFL plenty of times. Guys are going out there scared, going out there, overly cautious, and then that causes an injury itself. Now, Matt, last question on this. With the 49ers this past season, I don't know who you would swap for him. If you swap any back and plug Jerick McKinnon in, are they better or worse? And I know it's hard to tell because we didn't see much of him healthy, but if he's fully healthy, the full best you could expect for him, would they be better off with him this season than any other back?
Not with any other back. I think Raheem has clearly earned the opportunity to be the starter, so I wouldn't swap him with Raheem Mostert. Tevin Coleman may or may not be a toss-up depending on how you feel about what McKinnon's prospects for recovering fully are. To me, if you're looking for a twice injured running back to come and make you significantly better or worse, then you have more problems than what's in that running back room. I think that what he can do is be a nice supplement for the offense, and maybe they get marginally better. I don't think that if he was healthy that they would be any worse at all. But you just hope, you hope that he comes in and can deliver and, not have immense amounts of rust like we saw last year with Jason Verrett before they put him on IR in week 3. And of course, Jason Verrett was a Pro Bowl caliber corner before he started getting injured, and he missed 2-3 years in a row. And you could just see that rust was just on there. Not playing takes its toll on your skill set. So, Verrett will be back this year. So we'll see if, maybe because he went on injured because he was injured, but maybe exactly, maybe a little Noxzema for the skin. But, he was burnt toast. It was so bad. But having a healthy amount of time that you can, hey, man, I'm not rehabbing from an injury. And that's really important. And that's why we expect Jimmy Garoppolo to take a mental step forward. And Kyle talked about that the other day. When you don't have to worry about rehabbing, you just worry about playing football and establishing your skill set, then that's where good things happen. So it just remains to be seen how much better McKinnon at full strength, if he's there, would make this roster. So, to swap him out, at this point, it'd be, Jeff Wilson Jr. really is what you're swapping out for.
It's funny you say that, because that was kind of my best case scenario for him moving forward, would have been a Jeff Wilson type year. I only asked that to kind of see what potential he had essentially at his best case scenario. So I totally agree. Unfortunately, they wouldn't be worse off with him, but they're not, exponentially better because they have McKinnon in the backfield. But, only time will tell. Obviously, we're both hoping the best for him. Great McKinnon, great 49ers backfield. So there's no harm in that. But that's going to do it for us today, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Niners News here on 49ers Hive. Make sure you follow us both on Twitter. Our handles are below on the screen. And make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment below.
Hit the bell for all your notifications. We're bringing you 49ers content all the time.
Thanks, guys.
Go Niners.